Begin by letting your body settle into the stillness. Imagine the weight of your limbs sinking into the soft earth of ancient Greece. Above you, the sky is not black, but a deep, velvety indigo. There is no city light here, only the brilliance of 1,000 stars. Look up in your mind's eye and see the Milky Way, a glowing river of starlight spilled across the heavens. The ancients called this the Via Lactea. Legend tells us it was formed when the goddess Hera pushed the infant Hercules away, her divine milk splashing across the firmament to create the galaxy you see now. It is a reminder that even the stars carry the mark of his story. Breathe in the scent of night-blooming jasmine and the cooling stone of the mountains. You are safe. You are at the beginning of all things. High above, atop the cloud-veiled peaks of Mount Olympus, the gods are restless. Zeus, the king of the heavens, leans forward on his throne of gold. His voice, like the low hum of a summer storm, echoes through the halls of the immortals. He makes a grand proclamation. The next son, born of the bloodline of Perseus, shall be a king among men, a ruler of all who dwell around him. Zeus is thinking of the child he has sired with the mortal Alcmene, a woman of great wisdom and beauty. But Hera, his queen, listens from the shadows with a heart of cold flint. She knows the power of words and the weight of an oath. With a quiet, cunning smile, she descends from the heights. She uses her divine influence to slow the labor of Alcmene and hasten the birth of another, the frail Eurystheus. By a matter of hours, the prophecy is stolen. Heracles is born not to be a king, but to serve one. Even before his first breath, his life is defined by struggle and yet by a greatness that no crown could ever bestow. In the city of Thebes, within the thick stone walls of the royal palace, the air is heavy with expectation. Olive oil lamps flicker against the murals, casting long, dancing shadows. Alcmene finally rests. Beside her, in a cradle carved from sturdy oak, lie 2 infants. They are twins, yet they are worlds apart. There is Iphicles, a child of mortal spirit, soft and quiet. And beside him lies Heracles. Even in sleep, there is a heaviness to his small limbs, a vitality that seems to radiate from his skin like the warmth of a dying ember. The palace guards whisper that the boy does not cry. He simply watches the world with eyes that seem to know the weight of the tasks ahead. The moonlight spills through the high window, illuminating the 2 brothers. Outside, the owls of Athena call out from the olive groves. The world is waiting. The hero is here. For now, there is only the rhythmic breathing of the nursery, the safety of the blankets, and the long, silent night of Thebes. The night in Thebes was deep, a silence so thick it felt like velvet against the skin. Inside the royal nursery, the 2 infants, Heracles and Iphicles, lay swaddled in fine linen. But the peace was a thin veil. High on Olympus, Hera's resentment had curdled into a dark intent. She opened the gates of the underworld just a crack, and from the shadows, 2 serpents emerged. Their scales were the color of bruised plums, shimmering with a cold, iridescent light. They slithered over the threshold, their bellies rasping against the cold stone floor with a sound like dry autumn leaves. They reached the cradle. They rose, their hoods flaring, fangs glistening with a venom that could stop a heart in a single beat. Iphicles awoke and wailed in terror, his mortal instinct sensing the end. But Heracles simply looked at them. There was no fear in his golden eyes. He reached out with small, chubby hands, and before the snakes could strike, he gripped them by their cold necks. When the servants rushed in with torches, they found the infant laughing, holding the two limp, strangled shadows of Hera's spite. In that moment, the city knew this child was not merely a prince, he was a force of nature. Years passed like the turning of a golden wheel. The boy grew into a youth whose shoulders seemed too broad for any doorway. His education was a symphony of discipline and power. Imagine the heat of the Greek afternoon, the scent of dust and sweat on the training field. He learned the art of the bow from Eurytus, feeling the tension of the yew wood, the rhythmic breath before the release. He learned to wrestle from Autolycus, his feet treading deep into the sun-baked earth, learning how to use an opponent's weight against them. But it was not all iron and bone. He sat at the feet of the wise Linus, brother of Orpheus, to learn the lyre. Yet, the fire within him was difficult to tame. When Linus corrected him too harshly, Hercules, not knowing his own burgeoning strength, struck out with the lyre, and the music ended in tragedy. It was a sobering lesson for the young hero. He realized that his hands, capable of strangling serpents, could also destroy the things he loved. He was sent to the mountains to tend cattle, to live under the stars, to learn the quiet patience of the earth and the heavy responsibility of his own might. Heracles reached manhood and found a brief, shining window of peace. He married the princess Megara, and for a time, the hero's life was filled with the laughter of his children and the warmth of a hearth that did not smell of war. But Hera had not forgotten. She had only been waiting for the moment when his happiness was most complete, so that its destruction would be absolute. A dark mist began to coil around his mind, a divine madness sent from the heavens. The world turned red. The faces of his family became distorted, transformed by Hera's magic into the likeness of monsters and enemies. When the mist finally cleared, when the cold morning light touched the halls of his home, Heracles awoke to a silence that would never leave him. The tragedy was total. The weight of his grief was a mountain that no physical strength could move. Shaking and broken, he sought the oracle at Delphi. Through the haze of laurel smoke, the Pythia spoke a single path to redemption. He must go to Tiryns. He must serve the man who stole his birthright, the king Eurystheus. He must perform 10 labors, which would eventually become 12. Only through the fire of these impossible tasks could his soul be purified. Only then would he find the path to the stars. Heracles stood before the gates of Tiryns, his heart a heavy stone in his chest. His first task was a journey into the valley of Nemea, a place where the sun seemed to cast no light, for it was stalked by a nightmare. The Nemean lion. Its fur was not gold, but a dull, impenetrable bronze. No blade could bite it, no arrow could pierce its flank. Heracles tracked the beast to a two-mouthed cave. He blocked one entrance and stepped into the darkness of the other. He felt the vibration of the lion's low, guttural growl in his own bones. He fired his arrows, but they simply shattered against the beast's ribs like dry twigs. Realizing his weapons were useless, the hero cast them aside. He grappled with the lion, his bare arms wrapping around its massive neck, muscle against muscle, divine strength against primordial ferocity. When the struggle ended, the valley fell silent. Heracles used the lion's own razor-sharp claws to flay the hide, for only the lion could cut the lion. He emerged from the cave wearing the pelt as a cloak, the lion's head resting over his own, a golden mantle of invulnerability that would define his image for eternity. The second labor led him to the dark, bubbling marshes of Lerna. The air here was thick with the scent of sulfur and decay. Beneath the stagnant waters lived the Hydra, a multi-headed serpent of pure venom. Its breath was a lethal mist, its blood a searing poison. As Hercules struck off one head with his sword, two more would erupt from the bloody stump, hissing with renewed malice. It was a battle of attrition, a nightmare that multiplied with every effort. But he was not alone. His nephew, Aeolus, stood by his side with a burning torch. As Heracles severed a head, Aeolus would instantly cauterize the wound with fire, searing the flesh so no new heads could grow. Finally, reaching the one immortal head, Heracles buried it deep beneath a massive boulder by the road. Before leaving, he dipped his arrows into the Hydra's black blood, a choice that granted him a weapon of terrifying power, but one that would eventually weave the threads of his own fate. After the blood and fire of the first two labors, the third was a test of patience. A quiet, year-long pursuit through the silver-dappled forests of Arcadia. His target was the Ceryneian hind, a creature sacred to Artemis, with hooves of bronze and antlers of solid gold. It was so swift it could outrun an arrow in flight. Heracles did not wish to harm the deer, for to spill its blood was to invite the wrath of the gods. And so he simply followed. Through the heat of summer and the biting frost of winter, he tracked the golden glint of its horns through the deep brush. He learned the rhythm of its breath, the path of its hooves. For 1 full year, he lived as a shadow in the forest. Finally, as the hind paused to drink at the river Ladon, he captured it, not with a weapon, but with a gentle net. He proved that a hero's greatest strength is often his endurance, his ability to wait for the world to move. The labors grew more diverse. Next came the Erymanthian boar, a hulking, tusked titan that ravaged the mountain slopes. Heracles chased it into the deep, soft snow of winter, where the beast's own weight became its prison. He carried it back to Tiryns alive, so terrifying the king Eurystheus that the cowardly ruler hid inside a large bronze jar at the sight of it. Then he turned his eyes to the sky. The Stymphalian birds, man-eating creatures with feathers of sharp brass that they launched like daggers. They lived in the dense, dark reeds of a swamp where no man could walk. Hephaestus, the smith god, gifted Heracles giant bronze kratala, clappers that echoed with the sound of 1,000 thunderclaps. The hero stood on the shore and struck them together. The deafening roar sent the birds spiraling into the air in a panicked cloud, where Heracles brought them down with the precision of his bow. The final labor of this first half was perhaps the most humbling. King Augeas possessed the largest herd of cattle in the world, but their stables had not been cleaned for 30 years. The filth was a mountain, the task an insult. Eurystheus expected Heracles to toil in the muck for a lifetime. But the hero did not pick up a shovel. Instead, he stood before the great rivers Alpheus and Peneus. With his bare hands, he tore open the earth, digging vast trenches that redirected the ancient currents. The rivers groaned as they left their beds, rushing through the stables in a roaring wall of white water. In a single day, the filth was washed away, and the stables were left as clean as the stones of a mountain stream. Heracles had mastered the very elements, proving that the mind of a hero is as sharp as his sword is heavy. Breathe deeply now, as the sound of the rushing river fades into the background. The first 6 trials are complete. The hero rests, and so shall you. The 7th labor sent Heracles across the shimmering blue waves to the island of Crete. There, a magnificent bull, white as the foam of the sea, was ravaging the countryside. It was a creature of Poseidon, possessed by a divine frenzy. Heracles did not use a blade. He used the weight of his own body, wrestling the great beast until its fire was spent. He rode the tamed storm back across the sea, a silhouette against the setting sun. But the eighth labor was darker. In the frozen, windswept plains of Thrace, King Diomedes kept 4 mares that fed not on grain, but on the flesh of men. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and they were bound with iron chains to their bronze mangers. Heracles faced the cruelty of the king, ending his reign and feeding the tyrant to his own horses. As they ate, the madness left them. The mares became calm, their terrifying hunger replaced by the quiet spirit of the fields. They were led away into the mountains, eventually becoming the ancestors of the finest horses in Greece. For his 9th labor, Heracles traveled to the land of the Amazons, the warrior women of the East. His task was to retrieve the golden belt of their queen, Hippolyta, a gift from Ares, the god of war. There was no battle at first. Hippolyta, impressed by the hero's quiet strength, agreed to give him the belt freely. But Hera, disguised as an Amazon, spread a whisper of treachery through the ranks. A misunderstanding turned to steel and blood. Heracles secured the belt, but the victory was hollow, stained by the grief of a battle that should never have happened. He sailed home in silence, the golden belt a heavy weight in his hands, reflecting the flickering light of the moon on the water.
The 10th labor took Heracles to the far west, to the island of Erythea, where the sun sets into the eternal ocean. Here lived Geryon, a giant with 3 bodies joined at the waist, who guarded a herd of magnificent red cattle. The journey was long and grueling. Under the scorching heat of the Libyan desert, Heracles grew frustrated with the sun and tilted his bow toward Helios, the sun god. Impressed by the hero's audacity, Helios lent him a golden cup to sail across the ocean. On the island, Heracles defeated the 2-headed dog Orthrus and the giant Geryon. To mark his journey, he broke a mountain in 2, creating the Pillars of Heracles, the gateway between the known world and the great unknown. He drove the red cattle home, a long, slow procession across the continents as the stars watched from above. The 11th labor was a quest for immortality. He was sent to find the Garden of the Hesperides, where golden apples grew on a tree guarded by a 100-headed dragon. The location was a secret known only to the Old Man of the Sea. Heracles eventually found Atlas, the Titan who bore the weight of the entire celestial sphere upon his shoulders. Heracles offered a trade. He would hold the sky if Atlas would retrieve the apples. Imagine the sensation, the immense, cold weight of the stars and the planets pressing down on the hero's neck. Every muscle strained, the earth groaned beneath his feet. When Atlas returned, he did not wish to take the sky back. But Heracles, using his wit, asked Atlas to hold it for just a moment so he could pad his shoulders with a lion's skin. As Atlas took the burden, Heracles picked up the apples and walked away, his footsteps echoing in the thin mountain air. The final labor was the most feared. He was ordered to enter the house of Hades and bring back Cerberus, the 3-headed hound that guards the gates of the underworld. Heracles descended into the dark, cool mists of the afterlife. He stood before Hades and Persephone, his lion skin draped over his shoulders. Hades agreed on one condition. Heracles must master the beast using no weapons at all. In the dim, flickering light of the sticks, the hero grappled with the 3 heads, his grip unyielding even as the serpent tail of the dog lashed at him. He choked the beast into submission and dragged it into the blinding light of the upper world. The labor was done. The 12 tasks were finished. The debt of the soul was paid. Breathe out now. The shadows of the underworld are far behind. The hero has triumphed over death itself, and you are drifting closer to the stars. After the long solitude of the labors, Heracles sought the company of heroes. He joined Jason and the Argonauts on their quest for the Golden Fleece. Imagine the Argo, a ship of ancient oak, slicing through the wine-dark Aegean Sea. Heracles took the bench of the oarsmen, and it is said that with every stroke of his massive arms, the ship leaped forward like a dolphin. But his heart was soon tested by loss. During a stop at Chios, his young companion and squire, Hylas, went to a spring to fetch water and was pulled into the depths by enamored water nymphs. Heracles searched the woods for days, his voice booming through the trees, calling a name that only the wind answered. The Argo eventually had to sail on without him. The hero sat alone on the shore, learning that even a man who could hold the sky could not hold on to everything he loved. His travels led him next to the high, shimmering walls of Troy. The city was in a state of terror. King Laomedon had offended the gods, and in retribution, a monstrous sea creature was sent to devour the king's daughter, Hesione. Heracles found the princess chained to a jagged rock by the shore, the salt spray stinging her eyes as the beast emerged from the surf. Without hesitation, Heracles dove into the monster's gaping maw. From within its belly, he battled the beast for 3 days, eventually emerging victorious from the carcass, though the heat of the creature's stomach had singed his hair away. He saved the princess and the city, yet once again, he was met with the treachery of kings who refused to pay their debts. He walked away from the walls of Troy, a lone figure against the horizon, his shadow long and weary.
In the quiet halls of Calydon, Heracles found a new hope. He met Deianira, a woman of fierce spirit and golden grace. To win her hand, he wrestled the river god Achelous, who shifted shapes from a man to a serpent to a bull. Heracles broke one of the god's horns and claimed his bride. The early years of their marriage were peaceful, a rare respite for the son of Zeus. But fate was waiting at the river Euenos. To cross the rushing waters, they sought the help of the centaur Nessus, who offered to carry Deianira on his back. Halfway across, the centaur's wild nature took hold, and he attempted to abduct her. From the shore, Heracles drew his bow, the arrow tipped with the lethal black blood of the Hydra. The arrow found its mark. As Nessus lay dying, he whispered a final, poisonous lie to Deianira. He told her to take some of his blood and keep it as a love charm. If Heracles' heart ever strayed, she should dip a robe in the blood to win back his devotion. Deianira, fearing for her future happiness, gathered the dark fluid in a small vial. She did not know that the blood was tainted with the Hydra's venom. She did not know that she now held the key to the hero's end, wrapped in the guise of a promise. The years had begun to settle on Heracles like the dust of a long road. He was a man of many victories, yet his greatest trial was not a monster, but a simple gift. Deianira, hearing rumors of her husband's wandering heart, remembered the centaur's promise. She took a fine tunic and steeped it in the blood of Nessus, believing it to be a charm of eternal love. When Heracles donned the robe to perform a sacrifice to Zeus, the heat of the altar fire activated the Hydra's venom. The cloth clung to his skin like molten lead. The pain was absolute, a searing divine agony that no mortal frame could endure. He tried to tear the garment away, but it had become one with his flesh. In his final mortal struggle, he realized the centaur's revenge was complete. There was no enemy to strike, no beast to wrestle. There was only the inevitable surrender to the fire. With a calm that surpassed his pain,
Heracles ascended the slopes of Mount Oeta. He built his own funeral pyre from the wood of ancient oaks and wild olive trees. He laid his club and his lion's skin upon the timber and stretched himself out, looking up at the stars he had once carried. No mortal dared light the flame until the hero Poeas passed by. To him, Heracles gifted his legendary bow and arrows. As the torch touched the wood, the flames rose, orange and gold against the darkening sky. The crackle of the wood was the only sound in the vast silence of the mountain. Heracles did not cry out. He watched the smoke rise, drifting toward the heavens, as the fire began to consume the parts of him that were born of earth and blood. As the flames reached their peak, a profound mystery unfolded. The mortal half of Heracles, the part inherited from his mother Alcmene, perished in the fire, returning to the dust. But the divine spark, the essence inherited from Zeus, remained untouched. Imagine a shimmering light emerging from the embers, a soul purified by fire and suffering, stripped of all weight and all grief. Zeus looked down from the heights and signaled to his messenger. A great chariot, drawn by 4 immortal horses, descended through the clouds amidst a roll of thunder that shook the world. The mortal hero was gone. What remained was a god. The chariot climbed higher and higher, passing through the gates of Olympus. As Heracles stepped onto the marble floors of the immortals, the god stood in silence to honor the man who had done the impossible. Even Hera, whose shadow had followed him from his first breath, stepped forward. Looking upon the hero who had endured her trials with such dignity, her cold heart finally softened. In a final act of reconciliation, she offered him her own daughter, Hebe, the goddess of youth, in marriage. The war was over. The struggle was done. Heracles took his place among the constellations, the kneeling hero in the sky, a protector of mankind for all eternity. The fire on the mountain has turned to ash. The stars are bright and still. The hero is at rest, and now, so are you. Sleep now, beneath the gaze of the stars. Sleep, sleep, sleep.